You can create extension methods for everything. For example, classes and records, as well as for structs and interfaces, or even delegates. As mentioned, you should only create extension methods for types that are out of your control, meaning that you do not own the codebase or are unable to change the implementation. I'd like you to imagine that we are working in a really large organization where the domain classes are shared among many different projects. You install the domain library through the private NuGet server. You know that at least a couple of more projects depend on some functionality that you are going to build, which extends the order class. This is a great opportunity to build a reusable extension library. The order class in the solution doesn't have much functionality added to it. It's a simple representation of the order data. For simplicity, we are going to keep the domain library in the solution. You just have to imagine that this is installed through NuGet and that you do not have access to that source code and really outside of your control. I cannot stress this enough. As we talked about earlier in this module, it's good practice to keep your static classes focused on a single type. If we want to extend the order, you'd create an order extensions class. If we also want to extend the shipping provider, you guessed it, you'd create a shipping provider extensions class. The shared functionality that we want to build is a way to retrieve a report for an instance of an order. This will return a string when the generation is completed. The method generateReport takes the type it's extending as its first parameter. Remember, this could have been any reference type, value type, interface, or even delegate. The three things that make this an extension method are: it lives in a static class, it's a static method, the first parameter uses the this keyword. This method will now construct a report based on the order. We can use string interpolation to easily construct this string. Let's also make an overload that takes a second parameter. This illustrates how you can introduce method overloading for your extension methods. And now we can call generateReport. Add a using statement for the warehouse management system.domain.extensions. You will see that you have both the different overloads for generateReport. If you run this with the debugger attached, you can step into the extension method just like you would expect. What do you think happens if the method generateReport exists on the order class? We can go ahead and try that. Add a method that matches the second overload that accepts a string, but use a different parameter name. After this is added, let's go back to the program. It will now look like there are 3 overloads for this method, although 2 of them are identical, as both accept a string as the parameter. This means if you run the application, you would have a different result compared to before, as now we have this method on the order class. The compiler will make sure that it always uses the method available on the actual type before using an extension method, no matter if it was included using a global or normal using statement. Because we have different parameter naming, we could use a named argument to specify exactly which of these 2 methods we intend to run. If you change the call to the generateReport method and include a named parameter, you can make sure that it runs the method from that extension method library. It's worth noting that we didn't get any warnings or compiler errors when the order had the same method added to it. The application just behaved a little bit differently when executed. You've now introduced a library for extension methods. While this course does not cover how to package this as a NuGet package, it's worth to keep in mind that this could be a great idea if you are building reusable code for types that are commonly used within your company. Next, we are going to look at a very common library of extension methods that I can guarantee that you are going to be working with quite a lot.